have we done so far? So far in this second part of app cycle, app lifecycle, view controller lifecycle, and UI controls, we've created or we've embedded our view controller, our root view controller, into a navigation controller. The navigation controller gave us a navigation bar. In the navigation bar, we changed our title to say App Cycle UI Controls. On our root view controller, which we renamed Home View Controller, we added a UI button and we named it Show Controls. When we click on Show Controls, it segues over to our Controls View Controller, right? Our Controls View Controller also has in its title a back button. It enables us to go back to our Home View Controller. Let's run our application and see the state of it so we could continue from where we left off. So here I have my application running. I click on Show Controls. It segues, meaning it transitions over to view number 2. View number 2 is the Controls View Controller. Controls View Controller so far has 2 labels. A label has a switch and a label has a stepper. We were able to use auto layout to lay out our views. So let's continue on to storyboard and continue on our UI. So back on the controls view, let's add a segmented control. We haven't seen segmented control. So let's go over to our library and search for UI segmented control and drag over a segmented control. My segmented control, I will put it in the middle of my scene here. This is good. So let's lay that out. A segmented control, basically, it comes with 2 default buttons. As you select a button, it switches to whatever. In our case, we'll have an image. We'll have 2 images. We'll have 1 default image and 1 second image that we go to using the segmented control, right? Cool. So let's lay that out. Click on your segmented control. Click on Add New Constraints. For my segmented control, I will set my top anchor, or I'll set my top constraint to 20. And I'll add 1 constraint. So only 1 constraint. For now, it's 20 to the top, and add 1 constraint. Great. It's missing a center. Let's see what the error is, right? So here we're missing a center position. Let's add a center position. I'll click on my segmented control again. I'll go to Align Control, Align button here, and I'll center it horizontally. So I'll click on Horizontally in Container on my segmented control, horizontally in Container, and I'll click on Add 1 Constraint. At that point, our segmented control has been laid out correctly. We have no issues. Yes, sir? How did I do?
Center.
Oh, so you click on the button on the segmented control. You go to Align. Do you see Align at the bottom where I'm zooming in here? Click on Align and click on Horizontal in Container and click on Add Constraint. Cool? Good. Excellent. So here we have our segmented control. Now we'll drag in a UI image view because the segmented control will change what image we're currently looking at. Everybody? My segmented control, as I'm toggling between the buttons on the segmented control, it will change my image, what image I'm viewing. So we'll drag in an image view beneath our segmented control. So let's go ahead and get an image view from our library. So here, image view. Image view, I'll drag in an image view. I'll drag my trailing edge all the way to my white screen here, or to the edge of my trailing edge of the white view. I'll drag my leading image view to my leading edge of my super view. Cool. So let's set the constraints on that. So on my image view, I click my image view, I go to my add new constraints. For the top, I'll make it 8. For the leading, I'll make it 0. For the trailing, I'll also make it 0. So now I'm adding 3 constraints. 3 constraints. Okay? For the height of the image view, I'll make it proportional to the height of my super view. So I'll control drag. I'll control drag from my image view. Let's go to the document outline because I think you guys had issues earlier with the height. So I'll go to the document outline here. I'll go to the document outline, make sure I have my image view selected. Control drag from my image view up to my safe area here. Control drag from the image view up to the safe area. Did it work for you guys with the view? Were you able to see equal heights? Yeah. If you're able to see equal heights on the view, do it with the view. Are you able to see equal heights with the view? I'm getting mixed answers. Are you able to get equal heights if you control drag from the image view to the view? Okay. Yes? No? Okay. So control drag from the image view to the safe area, please. Everybody has equal heights on the safe area, correct? So select equal heights. And let's go and edit what the height is. So we go to the size inspector for my image view. I go to the size inspector. I edit my height, proportional height or equal height for you. I edit. Where it says 0.6 or whatever it says for you, edit it and make it 0.5. So a quarter the height of the device. A quarter the height. I'm sorry? A quarter. 0.25. Sorry. 0.25. A quarter the height of the device. And press enter. Okay, cool. So we have our image view. Let's go ahead and drag in a slider, a UI slider. So let's go back to the library and search for slider. Slider. I'm going to drag in a slider to my scene here.
Sorry, Alex. The 8 was towards the top page?
The 8 was towards the segmented control. The top for the UI view, yeah. The bottom did not have a bottom. We set a height in ratio to the super view. The height, Mel? So the height you want to control drag from the image view to the safe area and set equal heights. Set equal heights for the image view's height. You got it? Here. Follow here. Document outline. Document outline. Zoom in here. Click on image view. Control drag from image view. What do you have? Is your height? That's fine. Now you need to edit the height. So go to the size inspector. Go to the size inspector for the image view and edit the height where it says height there. Equal heights. Edit it to 0.5. Or 0.25. Sorry, I keep saying 0.5. 0.25. Cool? Great. So we dragged in a slider, a UI slider. I dragged in a UI slider. Go ahead and drag the trailing edge of the slider to right about where that blue guideline is for the margin for the trailing on our super view, and drag the left or the leading edge of the slider to the leading edge of our super view. Okay?
I don't know how you got that.
Library, slider. Object library, search for slider. Okay, let's set the constraints on our slider. So I click on my slider. I click on Add New Constraints. For the top of my slider, I'll set it to 20. For the leading edge of my slider, I set it to 20. For the trailing edge of my slider, I set it to 20. And I add 3 constraints. No, it's going to be difficult for you to get that thumb there if you put it to the edge. Okay? All right, excellent. So here we have our slider. Let's get a label. Our last element is a label. So get a label from the library. Get a label. Drag in the label below our slider here. 20 for the slider, 20 leading, 20 trailing, 20 top. You're welcome. For our label here, so use the label, use the guideline on the label here for the top. Okay. Drag your trailing label edge to the blue guideline. Drag your leading trailing, drag your leading label to the leading edge, okay? And let's set the constraints for our label. So for our label, click on Add New Constraints. For the top, keep it at 8. For the leading, 20. For the trailing, 20. And add 3 constraints. Okay? At this point, we shouldn't have any warnings or any errors with our layout. Click on your label, go to the Attributes Inspector, click on your label, go to the Attributes Inspector, and align it center. So center align. Where it says alignment here, by default it's left aligned. We want it to be center aligned. And for our label, just set in 2012 here. For my segmented control, put in cat where it says first. And where it says second, double click it. Where it says second here, double click it and put in dog. Cool. At this point, let's see what it looks like on an iPhone 4. So click on your iPhone 4. Still looks good. So we could make our image a bit taller. Stay on the iPhone 4. Click on your image view on your iPhone 4. I'm on iPhone 4. Click on my image view here. And go to the size inspector and edit the height. So edit the height. Edit the height to say 35%. So the height, I made it 35%. Okay. We could keep playing with that later, but for now, I'm sorry? You click on your image view. You go to the size inspector. And do you see equal heights or proportional height on one of the constraints? Yeah, equal height, so edit. You see the edit button? There's an edit button on your screen.
Yeah.
Click on edit, and yours should say maybe the multiplier is 0.25. Your multiplier, what's your multiplier? What is your multiplier right now?
The top space.
Click on your image view.
Okay.
Do you have an equal height constraint?
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Image view,
Okay.
equal height or proportional height. Click on edit and change the multiplier to 0.35.
There is no report.
Equal height. Do you see equal height or do you just see height? Okay, we'll come around to help you. Okay, cool. All right, let's go back to our iPhone 11 Pro Max. Let me zoom back in here. All right, cool. Let's run it just to see what the UI looks like. Let's run it. I click on Show Controls. For the most part, I see all the controls I have, minus the image view, because we do not have an image yet. So let's get some assets. I zipped out the file to us in Slack. Double click or download that zip. Double click on the zip file. It will open up. And we'll have some images in there. Do we see images? So we know how to import images into our assets folder. So go to your assets folder and import all the images. We might not use all of them, but for now, just import the images that we have. Import. Cool. So we should have 4 images. We have a cat, dog. This is my beautiful country. Sorry. And we have the Pursuit logo here, right? So cool. So we have 4 assets here. Let's go back to our storyboard. So on our storyboard, for the image view, we could start off, click on your image view. Click on your image view. Click on the attributes inspector. Yulia, how you doing? Good? Okay, click on the attributes inspector. Do we all see image? Do we all see image? Click on that down arrow, and now our assets that we just added shows up. So we could simply click on the cat image, and we have a cat, right? What we could do on an image view here, do we see where it says aspect fit? Right below content, right below view, do we see content mode? We could change what the aspect fit is. Let me zoom in here. So we could say scale to fill. We could say aspect fill. Click on aspect fill. Aspect fill will basically fill the frame with the cat. So click on aspect fill, right? So it scales or it fits that entire, as much space as the frame has, it will have the cat image. Cool? Let's run our application again. Yeah. Our cat is on screen. Okay, Matt, is it the add in the image? Did you add the assets?
Yeah. I just added the assets for you.
Okay, cool. So you added the assets. Click on your image view. Go to the attributes inspector. Go to the attributes inspector. And do you see image?
Yeah.
Click on image and select the cat image. And for the content mode, we changed it from aspect fit to aspect fill. Aspect fit basically ratios, whatever ratio the image has, it keeps that ratio. That's what aspect fit is. Aspect fill, it fills the frame with that image. Right? Cool, everybody? Before Xcode 11, I say a lot of before Xcode 11s here. There's a lot of cleanup like Apple keeps doing. Before Xcode 11, the default was scale to fill. So basically the default was to stretch the image. right? So Apple, after years and years, they updated it to make it more reasonable there with like what the image should look like. It shouldn't be stretched out by default. By default, it's aspect fit. Cool? All right. We changed it to aspect fill. It was aspect fit, we changed it to aspect fill. It's right beneath content mode. Do you see content mode, Tiffany? All right, cool. Do we all have our image? We all have our image? Lilia, you have your image? All right, cool. Dave, you have your image? All right, cool. All right, great, great, great. So our UI is basically done at this point. Our UI is basically done at this point. Now we need to connect our elements to our view controller. Okay? We'll do that. I take it you're a dog person. We'll add the dog in code. Okay? When the user selects on dog, we should show them a dog. Exactly. Cool. All right. So let's go here. Let's keep going. This is good. So bring up the assistant editor. Bring up the assistant editor. So I click right here where that menu is there. I bring up assistant editor. Click on it to bring up the assistant editor. Let's create some more space here. All right. If you selected your view controller, which we have been editing, you should have in your assistant editor, you should be seeing your controls view controller. Do we see next to our storyboard, do we have the controls view controller? Everybody? All right, cool. So let's start doing our control drags. All right, cool. Let's first control. Can't see. Oh, bring it up. Let me see. Oh, wait where you are. Do you see the automatic? 1 second. So Kirby's not able to see his. Do you see automatic? Is it automatic or manual? What do you see?
Automatic.
So click on automatic. Do you see controls? Controls view controller. On yours, on your screen. Click on, make sure you click on the control scene. 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 Does that change? Is it still, it's automatic, correct? Let me see.
When you sent me that, I really don't.
Change the class, right? Does it run? Do you see this when you run it?
Yeah, I think so. Like I did it before. I put the image.
Let me see if you have the class. I don't think you changed the class. You haven't changed the class.
Okay.
Remember we did that part?
Oh yeah.
So now you should be able to get it. All right. So let's go ahead and control drag. We'll control drag from the switch. Everybody with me? Yeah. After the cat, it said meow, and then after the cat, we changed the content mode to aspect fill. Did you do that? Okay, cool. So you're on board with everything we've done. You have the slider. You have the label. All right. So now we control dragging from the switch. So control drag from the switch here over to our view controller. Well, make sure it's the switch. Control drag from the switch over to the view controller. Make sure that your identity for your scene is controls view controller. So make sure that you click on the scene, you go to identity inspector, and it does say controls view controller. So here for the switch, for our switch, we'll simply call it switch control. It's an outlet, it's a switch control, the type is UI switch, right? And connect. Oscar, did that work for you? Make sure, over here, Oscar, so make sure when you click on your controls view controller, make sure when you go to the identity inspector here, it does say controls view controller. Okay? Okay, cool. So next up, let's go ahead and drag the label. So drag over the label and call it switch label. So control drag from the switch. Control drag from the switch. And we're calling it switch label. All right, so we have a switch label and we have a switch control. Make sure you drag in from the control and not the constraint. You could zoom up if you're not getting enough target, right? You could zoom up here. Or you could actually drag from the document outline. Everybody, you could still, Mel, you could also drag from the document outline. You see what I'm saying? Instead of like forcing to do, drag from, look at me, up here, Mel. You could drag from the document outline to your storyboard. Okay, cool. All right, so let's keep going here. Let's get the stepper. So we'll have a stepper. So drag, control drag from your stepper label. We'll call it stepper label. From the label, both the label and the stepper, we drag in both the label and the stepper. But for the label, we call it stepper label, right? Stepper label. Call it stepper control. And connect. Cool. Next up, we have our control. We have our stepper control. So control drag from the stepper. And we'll be calling this stepper control. Did we? Did I make a mistake here?
You said stepper label, but then you said stepper control.
Yeah, it's what I typed. That's word, right? Stepper label is the label. Yeah. All right, so here we have stepper control, which is the stepper. And we click connect. Great. Next, we drag the segmented control and we call it segmented control, okay? So here we have the segmented control, control drag from the segmented control and call it segmented control. Maitri, how you doing? Connect. Two more, we have the slider. We have the slider, we'll call it slider control, and we have the label, we'll call it label, slider label. So control drag from the slider. Yes. We're not dragging the UI. We're dragging the UI image soon. We'll drag it in after. Sorry. So slider control. You could drag in the image view right below the segmented control. So here we have the slider control for the slider. And I click in connect. So the image view, right? You could put the image view right below the segmented control here. So drag the image and call it image view. Right, image view for image view. And click connect. We have one more. We have the slider text, or the slider label, sorry. So slider label, control drag, and we're calling it slider label. Okay, connect. Great. One second. I'll zoom in here for us to see everything we have. All right, let's see what we have. Okay, so we coordinating with our UI. We have a switch, we have a switch label. So far, so good? So far, so good. We have a stepper, we have a stepper label. We have a segmented control. We have an image view. We have a slider. We have a slider label. And that's it, right? What's that? I'll pause here for station identification. Yes, sir.
Everything landing properly, but I'm getting 2 errors here. And this is the one used.
You just gotta change the account stuff to yours.
Oh, okay.
There's one more. Fail to register bundle. You don't have the device. What iOS one? Okay, let's go back here.
Oh, thank you.
Well, okay, let's go ahead and drag in some IB actions now. So here we have our properties. Let's just name this. I'll use a pragma mark here. All right, so here we have properties or outlets and properties. Here we have our life cycle. Now we know what that is, what that means. I could say view controller life cycle methods. And down here, we will have actions and methods. We'll control drag from the UI switch. We'll control drag from the UI switch. This time we're creating an action, not an outlet, an action. Right, so here make sure it says action. And the name of the action will say switch toggled. And we'll change the type to UI switch. From the UI switch. From the switch. Control drag from the switch. And connect. Control drag from the switch. The switch. So when the user changes the switch, we want to get an update there. So we have an action on that. Again, those are controls. Those are taking actions from the user. All those controls are taking actions from the user. The user switches something, that's an action, a trigger action. They change the stepper, decrement or increment, that's an action. Change cat to dog, that's an action. Move the slider, that's an action. So here we have our, I'm sorry, switch toggled here. That's the name. Okay. Did everybody put in the IB action here? Can we go up?
Wait, no. Okay.
Can we go up now? Everybody? Okay. Yes? All right. So let's go up here. And right below our IB outlets, not between here. Please don't submit code where you just have a random variable here like var name, right? We'll give you comments on that, but don't submit this, right? We don't do that. So I have a property I want to create. I created beneath my, above where it says my view controller lifecycle methods, and below my IB outlets. That's where I put my property. My property, I will call it switch value. Switch value is of type bool. I set it to true. And I create a computed property on it. But today we're starting to see what is known as a property observer here. This is called a property observer. What does a property observer do? It observes the property for changes. So when you set, when anybody sets the switch value, my did set gets called. Everybody? Did set here gets called when the value gets a new, when switch value gets a new value. When it gets assigned a new value, did set gets called. Okay? There's also will set, but will set is not used that much. I'm not even going to go over it. Will set, it's about to get set. Okay? But did set, it actually got set. Okay? We'll just see what did set looks like. So for my did set, in my did set property observer, it observes for changes, right? Observes changes on a property. Let me see. So I'll take that out here, and I will put it here, and I'll say observes changes on an object, on a property. Right? So we have will set and we have did set. Did set is more common than will set, right? Because did set is exactly when you want to change the UI. Will set is not the time you want to change the UI. You just get this update, this value is about to change, right? But did set, 99% of the time, that's what we'll be using, okay? To observe changes on a property. So here, when the user, or when we change our switch value, what we want to do here is update our switch label. So here we'll update our switch label here. So update switch label. So we'll say switch label, not control, switch label. That text, because the label has text on it, that's how we get access to that string to change it. It expects a string. It expects a string. So here we pass in the switch is, using string interpolation, we'll show what the string is. So the string is, we have access to the switch control itself. The switch control has a property called isOn. IsOn is a Boolean. Either it's true or false. Luba, the switch has a property on it called isOn. Either it's true or false. Okay? So we'll use that property on our switch control. So we'll say switch control isOn. If it's on, we'll use a ternary operator. We love those. So we use a ternary operator on the isOn property. What we're saying here, if it's true, if it's on, go ahead and pass in on. So the switch is on will be my string. If it's off, meaning the colon here, if it's false, if it's off, then just pass in off. Right? That's making use of the ternary operator. Yeah, at the end of the day, it only needs a string. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and test this. We need to update our, can we go down? Can we go down? Did everybody type out our switch value? Can we go down? Okay. Can we go down, everybody? All right, so here, do we, hello? So excited. When the switch gets toggled, our switch toggle method gets called. Do we agree? So this is the place where we want to change our switch value, right? So here we say our switch value, we want to set it. We simply set it by saying sender is a switch, sender dot is on. Sender is on, either it has true or false. The value of is on is either true or false. Everybody? Is on is a property on our switch. Is on is a property on our switch. Either it's true or false. When we set it on the switch value, what gets called?
Can you just go back just a little bit? All right, so we're doing, okay, it is, okay, the switch is okay.
Let me close that out so we have more space. Let's close it out so we have more space to see code. Close this out so we see more space, right? Okay, is that better? Can we see all that here? All right, so again, we said didSet is a property observer, right? It observes for changes on the property. We have willSet and we have didSet. Here we're using didSet. So the minute we change, when I say change, I'm saying, example, when I set switch value to some value, like true. Everybody, do we see my comment here? When I say switch value gets assigned some value, true or false, didSet gets called. This gets called. Everybody? So in the switch toggle action, when I assign switch value, a value of sender that is on, my didSet here gets called, and it updates my label. It updates the switch label. Okay? We have 3 more opportunities to do this today, so we'll get used to doing it. All right? Any questions before we move on? Go back to the function below here. So our switch toggle, it simply says switch value gets assigned the sender that is on.
And what is that, the didSet you said that observes the changes on the property? The didSet is its own
Yes.
And that code is supposed to print something.
Well, we have a message label getting printed out. Not a message label, but the switch label. It prints this out.
Changing
The label. Exactly, exactly. Joshua will come around and see what's your error message.
So then how come we put switch is on in the switch toggle? Do we have to call that?
We need to find out what the value is. Is it true or false?
Okay.
This basically is a statement that says, if this is true, back to unit 1. That's what I'm saying. Fundamentals are very, right? Fundamentally. Fundamentals, fundamental. Switch that is on is a statement. Is it true or false?
Right.
If it's true, it evaluates to on here. The on string gets returned and it's saying this switch is on.
Right.
If it's false, the string gets off instead of on.
Right.
So my string becomes this switch is off. Okay? Yes?
So, in the, where it says there switch value bool equals true, are you setting it as true to begin with? Or is
It's
it-
true by default. So when we ran our app, right, this is true by default. You could change that.
But the value that you're setting yourself,
Yes, it's true as well. Yes.
what would happen if you put it as false?
It wouldn't be any different because what it takes is our initial value on that particular switch. And then where it changes is in here. So the initial value in that case does not matter. Cool?
Yeah.
All right, so let's test this out and we'll keep explaining it as we test it out. So one way to know code is to test out and see what's happening and to go back to the code and understand what's happening in the code. So we run our application, we navigate over to our controls, right? Here we have the switches on, we click on the switch and we have the switch is off. Did everybody get that? Did that work for everybody? And if you toggle it again, it should go back to on. Right? Where that's happening in the did set. Put a breakpoint in your did set. Put a breakpoint in your did set. Everybody? Put a breakpoint in your did set here. Everybody, please. Put a breakpoint in your did set and go ahead and toggle the switch button. The breakpoint, it stopped at our breakpoint, correct? Because now my value, actually let's do two things. Put a breakpoint at 49 as well. Now for the breakpoint, in order to continue running, do you see the continue program execution button at the bottom in the debug area? Click on it, it's going to continue running the program. Everybody? Right? Okay, so let's go back here. So put a breakpoint also in the IB action for switch toggle. Put a breakpoint there. There's one breakpoint in the did set here, right? And there's a next breakpoint in my IB action. So I have two breakpoints. Let's try the switch again. So click on the switch again. What's the first breakpoint that got called? Anna, what's the first breakpoint that got called? Where did the first breakpoint stop? We have two breakpoints. Matri, where did the first breakpoint got stopped? So put a breakpoint also in your IB action. Everybody, we have two breakpoints. One in the IB action, one in the did set. So go back to your switch, click on the switch. Click on the switch. Eric, where's your first breakpoint? Where did it stop? Right, in the IB action. That's the first place. When I click on that switch button, my action gets called. Right? Does that make sense? So the first time I click on my switch, my action got called. If we continue, so continue, press on the continue running program button. Where does your breakpoint go next? To the did set, right? Because that value is about to get changed. And what gets changed on my, what listens? My did set. My did set is a property observer. It listens for changes. So as I set that value, meaning as I said my value equal to something, did set gets called. right?
So I noticed that here is the first person stopped using the function in the action function.
Yes.
But it says that it's the breakpoint 2.1, whereas the first one is breakpoint 1.1. Why is it like is it because
What we're looking for is the order of execution. The order of execution here, I click on the switch. The first one is in the IB action. The second one is in the did set, right? So to follow your code execution, you use breakpoints in that manner. Which one gets called first? Obviously, it should be my action. And then my action triggers, it assigns a new value to my switch value. My switch value did set got called. Because there we have a property observer. We have a property observer here, did set. Everybody? Cool? Great. So let's keep going here. Any questions before we move on?
this on or off clarify?
No, buttons doesn't have an is on property. That's just a switch property, is on, which makes sense, right? The switch is either on or off. Cool? All right. So let's keep going here. Let's do the stepper. So we're doing action for the stepper. Question, sir?
Oh, when I press the button and it's going to this screen.
Antonio, double check Joshua's computer, please. So here we have, let's work on the stepper. So get back to the identity inspector. Get back to your storyboard. Get back to your storyboard. Get back to your storyboard. Get back to the assistant editor. Okay, cool. So let's add the remaining actions. We'll add all the actions so we don't go back and forth with storyboard. So let's add a stepper action. Click on your stepper, control drag from your stepper, create an action, call it stepper changed. Everybody heard me, right? So click on your stepper, control drag to your view controller, and call that action stepper changed. Okay? So control drag from the stepper, call it stepper changed, and the type is UI stepper. Type is UI stepper. It's called stepper changed. It's an action. And we click connect. Right, so that is the stepper action. Let's go ahead and get a segmented action here. So control drag from your segmented control over to your view controller, and we'll call this one segmented control changed. So here we have segmented control changed. The type is a UI segmented control. Click on connect. Okay. And for our fourth action, we have a slider. So we'll call it slider changed. So control drag from your slider over to your view controller. We call it slider changed. We change type to UI slider, and we connect. So here we have 4 actions. Here we have 4 actions. One action we completed. We have 3 other actions to work on. Anybody still working on the actions? Okay, cool, cool, cool. Yeah. That's like a console warning thing. Leave it like that for now, and let's take a look at it. One of us will take a look at it. Does it break the app currently? Okay, so leave it like that for now, and we'll take a look at it. With the talking, I understand that we can we move on? Yeah? Okay, cool. So let's go up to our view did load area here. Right around our view did load function, we'll create some helper functions. Right? Our first helper function, we'll create a function. We'll call it configure stepper. Configure stepper, what's that going to do is give the stepper a minimum value. We could set that in interface builder. We could set it in the attributes inspector. But now we need to start writing more code and understanding how to change behavior with code. So here we'll do it in code. Okay? Whatever we're doing here, we could also do it in the attributes inspector. Okay? So for here, we'll configure the stepper. The stepper needs a minimum value, a maximum value, step value, right? So here we have our stepper control. So stepper control will give it a minimum value. You're right. I'll put it. No, keep it there. Keep it after video load. All right. So here minimum value, we'll give it 1.0. So the minimum value of the stepper, as we step the value down, we cannot go below 1.0. Everybody? The minimum value indicates I cannot go below 1.0. Stepper control maximum value, I'll set that to 7.0. The stepper also has what's known as a step value, like what you increment by. Here, if you see on my screen, it says the step or increment value of the stepper. At the very bottom of the pop-up here, do we see it? It says the step or increment value of the stepper. Do we see that? Okay, so that's what it steps by. So every time I click on that plus button, it goes up by 1. If I click on the minus, it goes down by 1. Cool? So here I have my step value. I'll set that to 1.0. What's that? It could be 0.1, but in our case, let's just make it 1.0. Okay? And you could give it a default start value. For our default start value, we'll give it 6.0. So here, this is the default start value.
Well, if you do 1.0, then it's going to go from 6.0 straight to 7.0.
Yes.
But how do you see 6.3?
We're not going to do 0.3s. We'll just keep it simple on our stepper. Right? You could change it to increment by 0.1. But it will go 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you have to do some logic there too to stop it. Is there a 6.7?
That's fine. It's going to stop at 7.0.
Okay. I see you. Cool. All right. So here we have our default start value of 6.0. We have our minimum of 1.0. We have our maximum of 7.0. And we increment by 1. Increment or decrement by 1.
Not to much to outside. But in that case, if you put it to 0.1, you just have to put the maximum value at 6.5 or something.
Yes. And do some more work there too. That's not enough. Right? All right, cool. So let's keep going. Where do we want to put up setup logic? I want to call this method. Where's a good place to call this method? I want to call configure stepper somewhere. We went through life cycles of a view controller earlier. Where is a good place to put that? Should I put it in view will appear? Where should I put it?
In the stepper action?
We just throwing terms out there. CVC, stepper. View will appear is one place to put it. But if I put it in the view will appear, every time my view comes on screen, this gets called. This is like a startup thing. I want this to happen the first time the app or the view comes on screen. After that, I don't care about the setup anymore. Where should I put it?
Inside of user here.
View did load. Thank you, sir. In view did load. That happens once. I only want to set this up the first time the view comes on screen. Not every time the view comes on screen. So that's a good view lifecycle question. Where should I put my configure stepper? I only want to configure the stepper the first time the view loads. So I put it in view did load, not view will appear. Okay? View will appear. What happens every time this comes on screen, it sets the stepper value. There's no reason for that. That's doing too much work, unnecessary work. So we put it in view did load. So here I call configure stepper in view did load. Great. Let's go to our stepper action. So make sure that you have your configure stepper, right? And let's go down to our stepper action here. Actually, before we go to our stepper action, we need to create a local variable here. So let's create a variable. We will call it, what's a good name for it? Cohort. Okay, we'll call it cohort. It's going to use the same design pattern we had here. So cohort is of type double. We set it to 6.0 as some default. And we use a property observer. We use did set on it. And we say stepper label. We're changing the label of the stepper each time this value changes. And here we're saying, looking at, using string interpolation, we'll say stepper control dot value. That value here is the current value of the stepper. So looking at value cohort, whatever the value is. And again, that value here is a property value on the stepper. Okay? I think I can get rid of my cat here. Yes, good observation there, Mr. Eric. Any function that does some setup logic for your view should go in view did load. Okay? If you want it to happen once, that's where it goes. Thank you, sir. Exactly. You don't want to have to do unnecessary work here. Yes, throughout the that view controller lifecycle. All right, so let's keep going. Let's go down to our stepper now and change cohort. So here we have cohort, which is our value. It expects a double. So here I'm going to pass in sender.value, which is also a double. Great. The sender here is my stepper. My stepper, its value is of type double. And the is on is, as we said, it was true or false. It was a Boolean of type bool. Cool. So let's test out our code here. Let's run our application. Run our application. And we segue over to our stepper. Does our stepper work? If I increment or decrement, sorry, it does go to 5.0. Does it go past 1.0? It doesn't. So that's great. Does it go past 7.0? It doesn't. Also great. Right? So that works. Right? Our control works. This is the second control of the day. First control we had, well, third control of the day, because we have a button in the beginning of our code. Here we have our switch, that still works. We have our stepper, that works. Cool? Let's go to our segmented control now. Any questions before we move on?
I got an error that I don't.
You move your button around. Double check to see if you delete. You probably deleted some some UI element without disconnecting it. All right. Let's go on to the segmented control. So for our segmented control, we'll also create a property observer on our segmented control. This one is going to be the bigger one so far. So here we have a third property. We'll call it current segmented index or current segment index. This is what? This is not code, this is playing. All right, so here we have a current segment index. The index of our cat and dog, the segment control, starts off with a default index of 0. So if cat is 0, what is dog? 1. Excellent. So here we have a segmented control. We call it, well, we have a variable called current segmented index, and we are going to use did set again on it. So each time this variable changes, we want to change our image. So we switch on the segmented control dot selected segmented index. So the segmented control, its property that we're after, is called selected segmented index. What index did the user select? Right? This selected index there says what index did the user select. If I select on the cat index, what index is that? 0. So that's why we have a switch statement there to use that. Again, everything comes together here. Why we need switches, all that stuff. Right? So here we have our image view. Let's change the image view. If the user selects a cat, we want a meow according to Tiffany. So let's get an image. So here we have our image view, right? We dragged in, we have our image view. Our image view has a property called image. So we say image view.image. And here we could use what's known as an image literal. We could use what's known as an image literal, literally an image. So you type in image literal, you press enter. Right? You should get a placeholder. Did everybody get a placeholder image? Again, let me do it again. You type in image literal. You type in image literal. Shania? Yeah? Good. You type in image literal. You press enter. It gives you literally an image. Double click on that placeholder image. What do you see? Oh, look at that. I double click on the image, I see my assets. All the images I have in my assets, I have access to it now. So I select the appropriate image, a cat, and I have a cat. How are we doing? Yes, 1 + 1. Very good. Catching up is good. Double click on the image. It came up? Did the dialog come up? Did you type in image literal? Yeah. What's yours called? Okay, that's fine. It's an image view, correct? Okay, so that's fine. Antonio, double check Mel's computer. Yes. Yes. Do you have the cat in your assets? Yes. Okay, cool. So let's get the cat back in there. Did you type in image view.image? Yes. Okay. Type in image literal. Type in image literal. Yes. Press enter. Did you see like a mountain, a placeholder? Yes. Double click on it. Double click on that image. Cool? You're welcome. And now we select our cat.
I'm not getting an image. I'm getting an image.
Do you have the assets in your folder? Everybody got the cat? Everybody got the cat? Yulia, is your cat meow? No. Okay. You got your cat though, right? Okay, very good. Yes, sir. The image view has a property called image. Because without an image, you cannot set that image on the image view. Yes, because it expects an image. Exactly, exactly. Very good. So Eric's question was, how does the compiler know to render an image there? It knows because it expects an image. Very similar to an enum. You could say that your case because it knows it expects an enum. Very good. Okay, so we will break here and we'll come back to finish the lesson.